Welcome to the Tectonic Takes podcast, where myself, Ivan, Devon, and Abram will talk about the new California kids on the block and how we welcome them and they crushed our dreams. How are you doing, Abram?
I'm okay. The way we record these podcasts lately has been. Well, I haven't actually been here, so welcome back, me.
Yeah.
But no,
Welcome
uh,
back, Abram.
I take a nap. I wake up at 5:30 because I work, and then 5:30 is like not close enough to me to like get ready right after work, but far enough to where I'm like I could take a nap. But I always push it right to the edge. And Ivan's like, "We're getting out at 5:20." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." My nap is a little bit shorter now, but I managed to be here and I'm awake, so I'm doing something right.
We usually aim for 5:30, but it's just like when you're trying to leave the house, you want to say, "Okay, let's leave 10 minutes early" when you're trying to use that as a buffer to get to your actual intended time. But instead, we're all on top of it somehow and we are recording a little bit earlier, just slightly.
Ivan, I wish you were around yesterday when I was getting ready to leave for the San Diego game. Because, yeah, I mean, 4 o'clock, obviously, I know I have to be there earlier, but I was just like, yeah, I'll leave the house like 3. Obviously, that was a
Bro.
big, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I got there around the 10th, 13th minute. Yeah, not the best.
Yeah, because you and I, we live in the same part of East Bay, and I try to give myself at least a 2 hour buffer, just in case. And it wasn't so bad going down 880, although annoyingly, like the last few exits before Coleman, there was a couple of cars that were sidelined and the police were trying to help them out or something. That backed things up, but it wasn't the line to get into the stadium, at least not yet. Saz had to find himself in that line for sure. And Saz will be joining us perhaps next week. He celebrated his birthday this weekend, and yep, enough said, right? But his birthday magic can help the earthquakes. My birthday and Abram's girlfriend's birthday is coming up this weekend, so we'll see if that dose of double birthday magic can turn our fortunes around against Houston. But yep,
Happy birthday to Ivan and Abram's girlfriend in the comments below.
yeah,
I'll
thank you.
make sure to let her
August
know.
21st, to be specific. We'll see if we get it out by then. But yeah, thank you both for being a part of this impromptu birthday celebration. Even though the rest of this episode won't be much of a celebration, but we do have a game to talk about, and it started out very promising, and it didn't end up that way, of course, given the tone of everything we've said so far. So the main headline is the with the lineup that even with Ian Harkes back from suspension, because we did beat the Vancouver Whitecaps, they Bruce Arena decided to field the same starting 11. So Mark Anthony Kaye got another opportunity to start in that game. And the forward line of Espinoza, Martinez, and Narango, a lot expected of them. This is a big game. These are big game players. And to mix results. But as for the San Diego lineup, the big story with them, of course, no Chucky Lozano, which disappointed probably half the people in attendance, 17,000 in attendance for this game, and many people probably hoping to see Chucky Lozano. But they did have a potential MVP candidate, Anders Dreyer, leading the line, and the average age of the San Diego team is 25 years old. They're buoyed by a lot of young defenders, aside from Christopher McVeigh. Cejito Santos, of course, very young. He was a backup goalkeeper at Inter Miami, and there was a moment leading up to the first goal of the game where you can understand why he was a backup until very recently. We got to see our old friend Anibal Godoy, and then there was plenty of other strong midfield options for San Diego to surround Anders Dreyer with. And of course, you're familiar with Anders Dreyer, Devon. What did you make of this lineup, and what were you expecting? I'm sure he delivered to our detriment.
He delivered in a way that we hoped he couldn't. Um, I mean, Dreyer got the goal, the go-ahead goal to give them the win. I think overall their lineup was much. I don't want to say it's much stronger than us because watching the game, it just kind of seemed like there were just a lot of individual mistakes and just lack of chemistry on both sides of the field as well. You know, San Diego had a lot of counterattack chances that they just couldn't finalize or put away, and Daniel made a couple good saves, or Muni made an incredible, backline save, or just slide tackle to prevent a shot from happening. Despite the fact that our defense is so critiqued highly, they actually showed up for the most part of yesterday. Um, but I think, after the 80th minute again, just like Vancouver, and just, I think even the Austin game in US Open Cup, anything past the 80th minute, we just somehow find a way to crumble. We can't hold the lead. So in that respect, San Diego did their best. They had a bunch of opportunities, but so did the Earthquakes. Um, in a head-to-head lineup, I think the Earthquakes looked statistically worse on paper, but also we had better opportunities. And it's something I posted in the chat too. Like, I I want Abrams in your opinions on this. I don't think that we make a good final third pass to actually set up that perfect shot. There were tons of times where Josef Martinez was wide open, and a couple of our guys like Espinoza when Dewan Jones was in possession. I think it was in the second half, one of the half. I'm not sure which half it was, but Dewan Jones was heading straight to the net. Espinoza was wide open to his left, and instead of passing it to Espy, he just took the shot. Like there's plenty of opportunities for that perfect pass for a surefire goal, and it's either the first touch that lets them down, or it's just the pass that gets too far away. There's too much of that. Right? We need to shape things up offensively and start becoming that team that we once knew in the first 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you were asking me about my thoughts about the chances being made, and obviously I did get there around the 13th minute. That's when I remember seeing the scoreboard. That's when I remember like getting in there. I was talking to Ivan a little bit with Avi, which is the whole grace period that I missed. Usually, like we're there and we hang out before the game. We had to do that during the game, but what I saw was a team who was very dominant. I think that uh, going forward, we were able to make a lot of opportunities, and we were not able to. Once we got in the box, we were not good. I think Bruce Arena mentioned that this team was not a good team in the box tonight. In the first half, we had 9 shots to their 1.
That might be correct. I feel
Yeah,
like that's a
first
correct
half.
number.
Yeah, I remember that stood out for
Okay,
us. And only
so
one or even
nine
0 on top on target.
9 shots to 2. And so not just that, that's the first half stats. The obviously I know we don't all like expected goals, but I'm going to use them for a point. We had 9 shots and zero point 0.7 expected goals. And so if you're looking at a game where it's like 2-1 and the team that scored 2 has zero point 0.7 expected goals, that's fine, right? We had 9 shots. That's so little expected goals per shot. And I don't that that to me shows that like the opportunities we're getting are not good enough, and the ones that were good. I mean, you guys saw it. Chicho had a lot of opportunities in the box where he could have gotten a shot off or something, but he just didn't touch it right. Like I remember one specific opportunity where he got the ball sent to him on the chest, and he chested it just a little bit too far, so he wasn't able to get that shot off immediately after.
Yeah, I think it
If he
was
gets
too
that
high
shot
as well.
off, that's a really high XG chance, right? Getting a shot off that close inside the box. If he was able to make contact with the cross where he tried a bicycle kick. Not saying he shouldn't try a bicycle kick. I thought it was awesome to do that, but that would have been a very high XG chance because of the proximity to the goal. But when you're looking at the XG that comes out of those 9 shots, it's not good enough, and the chances that we're making aren't that quality. And I think that reflects in the eye test when you're watching the game. It's like, okay, we're getting in their box, we're creating chances, but like, man, they're just like blocking us off at the last moment every single time. And that could be credit to them, but I feel like you could also say that like Chicho Arango, who I know I've been blaming a lot, but it was a lot of his doing where he was just taking the wrong touch or just like making the wrong decision in the last moment. I think I saw a stat that he scored one in the last 8 games. And obviously, that's reminiscent of the stats that he had after his falling out in RSL. Just not getting that many goals after something happened. And no, it's obviously indicative of an issue in the front line where we should have gone. We could have been like looking at a 2-0 game at halftime here. That's a very big possibility if those chances are taken correctly. But I don't think that was the case. I think that I don't know if there's miscommunication, but maybe just like lack of focus. Like when it matters, I don't know if the focus was there. I don't think that Josef Martinez adds a lot in the build-up, but I don't think anyone expects a lot from him in the build-up. I think they're like, okay, Josef is the guy in the box who's going to score a goal. That's what we saw from him, and so Arango is the guy you're looking at to more do that. But I was talking with Brian Ginrich. Sorry, I'm talking so much, but I have a lot of points to make about this specific topic. Judd offers a lot, right? He offers off the ball pressing. He offers build up and able to hold the ball up in dangerous areas. And I think that when you're looking at Josef and you're not getting enough value out of him, then Judd's kind of the guy you want. So maybe the starter and the super sub roles, maybe you want to switch them because Joseph is obviously a very good poacher in the box, but doesn't provide very much outside of that. Judd provides a lot, and he does do the poaching, but he's obviously not as efficient as a finisher as Joseph is. So you got to look at what the facts are and then kind of adjust based on that. And that's kind of what I think on that.
Yeah, just reading back to my notes as well, and I agree with your points there, and I'm going to add to it here. The top performers at halftime for San Diego, Christopher McVeigh, Luca Bombino, and Valcari. So that's two defenders and a defensive midfielder. The top performers for San Jose, Daniel Mooney, Bruno Wilson. Christian Espinoza is the only offensive player that eclipsed a 7.0 in halftime. And then Devon Jones, who, despite the one opportunity where he shot when he should have passed, he had 4 or 5 really good runs, and he was causing a lot of trouble on the right-hand side. So we still wasted a Devon Jones performance, even if one of those times was his own fault. And I'm not sure which part is more frustrating for me reading back these notes. 6 or 7 times where I've wrote some variation of breakdown of the final third, missed touch, first touch lets them down, or all the good things I wrote about the defenders, because I want to see the growth, and I do see in some areas the growth in this back line where I do think that, as harsh as it may sound, and I do appreciate Romney and Mooney and Wilson and Rodriguez when he's in there, and then, of course, Floriani and Roberts if you want to complete the set, but you can upgrade on this center back trio. I think that would be a move that you can make before the window slams shut. I think that you have to be willing to upgrade on what you got if you're not in the top 4 spots of your conference in Major League Soccer. Heck, even those teams are thinking of adding more players. Vancouver added Thomas Muller. What's our excuse? Vancouver's a nice city, but so is San Jose, so is the Bay Area. Yeah. So we can't be so loyal to players that, even though they're working hard and they have these moments where they've saved our bacon and they make some clearances and it looks great and they look good for 80 minutes, but no matter how good of a defense you are for 80 minutes, you can't be a good defense if you can't hold a clean sheet once in a while. It's like we're Oliver Twist. Please, may I have a clean sheet? Please, just one. It's ridiculous. And that leads into, of course, the most important part of the game. We benefit from a CJ Dos Santos error where Noel Buck was able to turn it over. Joseph Martinez scores. That's been the one consistent thing of this offense, Joseph Martinez scoring. And then, Devon, would you like to describe the first goal that San Jose scores?
Sure. I mean, it just started with the high press, which I think kind of looking back on what the conversations last night post game, there's just a lot of fans are upset with Josef Martinez's lack of pressure. But I think in this specific instance, he placed himself in a good position to force CJ a direct out up the field rather than passing laterally, which I think is what he wanted to do. So that said, Josef placed himself laterally of CJ, and then that gave Buck an opportunity to press as hard as he could when the goalkeeper took a step back, which blocked the shot, went straight to Josef, dodged around a player or two, and then took a shot deflected off one of the defenders' heads and into the top left corner. Brilliant read by both of those players, and I'm glad we could finally capitalize on some sort of defensive strategy high up the field.
To further critique the goalkeeper side of things, my brother Eric was at the game and he played goalkeeper for San Francisco State, so he's more qualified than anyone here to give this analysis. CJ Dos Santos is quote unquote a moron, trying to play 4D chess, and he could have played the simple pass to his left way sooner. So I apologize if I started any beef between Eric and CJ Dos Santos with that first statement, but I think that he was a little bit panicked. He didn't notice that he had the pass to his left, and that's just a sign of a young goalkeeper, and that's the one weakness San Diego have. And when you're an expansion side and this is your first year in Major League Soccer, this is really like nitpicking. This is champagne problems for the two people listening to this podcast excited for the next Taylor Swift album. That San Diego will live and die with those mistakes. They trust the fact that 4 of their 5 players in their defensive unit are under the age of 22, or maybe CJ.
I do kind of think it's a funny thought that a goalkeeper for San Diego FC would start beef all because of the Tectonic Takes podcast.
You never know, but you gotta cash in on those mistakes, and we let him off the hook by our collapse later in the game. It reminded me of Joe Hart. He had the error that led to Wales scoring against England in the 2016 Euros group stage, and England still went on to win 2-1. But the ironic part about that ironic game was that Wales, despite losing that game to England, still topped that group ahead of England. And of course, it set up England versus Iceland. The rest is history. But I digress. Unfortunately, though, it was a throw-in that partially doomed the San Jose Earthquakes to concede the first goal, and it was the substitute Marcus Ingvartsen who he's missed a lot of time. He's only played 5 games or so this season because he's been injured. But that intended front three of Ingvartsen with Dreyer and Chucky Lozano either side of him, that's going to be a problem for other teams down the stretch in Major League Soccer. But Abram, walk us through that 1-1 goal.
I don't know why, but that particular goal, I'm going to have to throw it back to you, Evan, because I don't really remember that one. I remember being incredibly frustrated. I might have been talking to someone else in the press box, but for some reason I just don't remember any of the build-up. I just remember seeing it, the shot, and then seeing it go in.
From my vantage point, I wasn't as mad in the moment because Ingvartsen, true to his Nordic roots, he's a very tall human, and we don't have as many tall humans as San Diego did in that unit of their lineup. So that was tough, but at the same time, you deal with corner after corner after corner, and throw-ins are supposed to be easier to deal with than corners because you can't get as much leverage. So that harkens back to Bruce Arena's press conference, which in and of itself is noteworthy, even by his standards, that they weren't smart enough. And he does also add to his credit that they weren't well coached enough, so that's Bruce Arena taking some of the blame here. But these are things scenarios you practice over and over again in the training ground, and if you can't get it right here, you're not going to make the playoffs. That's going to be something that we look back on, and it's weird to think, we regret dropping 3 points against the Supporters' Shield favorite or one of the Supporters' Shield contenders, but you got to beat who you can beat at this point. You don't have the luxury of picking and choosing, and that'll probably retire that segment for the rest of this season of trying to project where we can get our 3 points and our draw on the road, because you just have to win as many games as possible. That's the bottom line now. So, yeah, we will be kicking ourselves if we look back and we're not in the playoffs. This will be one of those prime games, and it's a crowded field of those types of games, as San Jose are in that dubious conversation of most points dropped from winning positions for the second year running. And it just went from bad to worse in the 84th minute, Devon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still confused what the decision was and what our back line was thinking for the Dryer goal. First of all, I think that pass to Dryer itself was incredible, and that run to give himself that goal, excellent. I'm not going to complain too much about our defending. It was a fantastic
I
play.
will.
I'll let Abram do most of the complaints here, but I'll speak my piece before sending it off to Abram. I don't know what Wilson was doing so far up the field. If Dryer's on sides by being on his own side of the field, why isn't Wilson right there on that line? If he's there to support, sure, he could be there to support when needed, but he wasn't needed. And why, he has to have more awareness than that. So I'll send the rest of the thoughts to Abram.
Yeah, no, it's funny to me how you're like, I'm not gonna, dog on the defenders too much. Then you highlighted the exact problem, which, so basically, it was a ball over the top. It just, and then they ran in behind 1v1, crazy. But what is unacceptable from our defense is how Dryer had space behind our last defender in his own half, so there's no offsides, and is able to run. Like, what are we doing? Like, why? You, as a last defender, you have to at least like see that there is a guy close to making a forward run and be at least on the line. You have to keep your eye on him. You have to be in a position where you can at least see him. But Bruno Wilson, I don't know where Romney was at this point. He might not be to blame because I genuinely don't remember where he was. I don't remember the context of where he was on the pitch at that time. But if Romney's not there, Bruno Wilson is supposed to be on that guy because he is the only threat. He is the only threat at that moment where he is, again, behind our last defender in his own half. So that would paint the picture to you that our defense is way too pushed up, and nobody was fast enough to catch him. That guy was booking it, and it's just like it's fully just off the ball defensive awareness. That is the sole reason why they were able to score that goal. We should have gotten points this game. If we didn't win, it 1-1 would have been fine. But that goal is just so unacceptable, so unprofessional. Like I don't see a world in which you see that and then you can or I don't see how any of the defenders can even like defend themselves. You can't, like, that's just one of the mainstays in, like, you learn as a 6-year-old in soccer, like the defenders stay back so that the forwards don't go in to score, right? And it's just ridiculous to me. And I don't see how we can be. Why are we playing? Why are we coming out every week if you're just like, oh, he can go that way, that's fine. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and I don't
Also,
think it's being gassed. You have 5 subs too, so that should not be hurting you when you can sub half your outfield players in any game. It's just a variety
it
of
also
factors.
sorry, Ivan, to cut you off. I just want to make this little piece, the two pieces here. First of all, why are we making substitutions in the 80th minute, or the early 80th minute, when we have 5 available subs to keep our squad fresh? I feel like if we made earlier subs, and I know that this could be like time promises to both Josef and Chicho, and because they're our top scorers, you want to keep them on the field for as long as possible, and then you sub on Judd when we really want to get an extra goal. But if we want to keep our squad fresh, why not make subs in the 70th, 60th, 65th minute? This is what drains the team. This is why San Diego can come out and make earlier subs and create a definitive impact against our team, because I feel like we just run with a depleted squad for too long throughout that 90-minute period, and then all of a sudden here we are in the 80th minute with tired legs, like kind of Bruno Wilson and our center back line. Like, they can't catch up to that. Bring some subs earlier, and then maybe that won't happen.
Yeah, and granted, one of those earlier substitutions from San Diego was forced. Aiden Harangi had to be subbed out due to injury in the 38th minute for Franco Negri, who was awarded the highest rating of this game. So congratulations to that substitute. Granted, played 52 minutes to get player of the match there. But they brought in Luca De La Torre at halftime. They brought in the eventual tying goal scorer, Marcus Ingvartsen, in the 65th minute. So to your point, Devon, yeah, you want to keep both Arango and Martinez as long as possible because of their pedigree, and they have been providing goals throughout the season. But in this particular game, it felt like the two of them together were not producing the goods. Martinez, okay, he eventually scored. So for using not results-oriented thinking, let's just keep Martinez in there. But then how about in the same time that Ingvartsen's coming in for Godoy, let's take out somebody, if not Arango. Arango could be a consideration for Judd, who has been productive off the bench.
And Bruce did touch on that in the press conference a little bit. He said that if we hadn't scored that goal, maybe he would have put on subs on earlier. And I'm like, okay, I feel like you have to try and hold the lead. Like, I'm not saying park the bus, but I feel like when I'm playing FIFA, which obviously is a much less high stakes situation where I'm not getting paid, I'm like, okay, I'm a goal up, right? And so we need energy to be able to maintain this lead. And so I'll make subs in the midfield, and obviously we had made midfield subs at that point, so that's not good. But like we need to be able to press from the front line. We need to be able to stay threatening. So we need to have forwards who are going to, have energy and all these kinds of things. I don't. I understand that he said that, like, if things were different, I would have done things differently. I think you have to be consistent with how you are playing your sub game, because we have the depth. For the first time in a long time, we have a good amount of depth that we can put on and not lose too much quality in those areas. I feel like it was not necessary to push it against the top team in the supporter standings, right? Like that's ridiculous to me. I think he's right about how the coaching hasn't been up to par in that particular, area. I feel like he's been weird with subs. He was very critical of himself, but it almost feels like he was only doing that because he was prompted to do so by the questions. He was like, "What do you feel like?" And he was like, "Yeah." Like, I don't. It didn't feel genuine. It felt like he was just like, whatever's gonna get the press off my back, because
I feel like he's just ready to kind of move on. There's actually a current fan theory going on, Ivan, that we kind of believe the front office, or that he's like, Bruce is kind of just upset. We can tell he's upset through press conferences, and we kind of feel like there's an underlining, like, theory, I guess, that the FO kind of gave him financial promises to bolster the squad, and either the front office either hasn't delivered, or he realizes that our club infrastructure just simply isn't enough to pull the player names he wants. And people are kind of believing it's the first of the two, or the former rather than the latter. And so I think, also on that front, like, given the transfer market right now, we've only paid 500,000 for a player when, Bruce wanted these bigger names to create a bigger impact, and we still haven't seen that in the transfer market. Now that Fisher's put the team up for sale, who knows if Bruce is going to receive that transfer fund. So this also has an impact in how we kind of progress through the rest of the season, to see even if we do make playoffs, or if we, have that one extra home game for the wild card.
Yeah, and a lot of this is centered around, there's like a logjam at defensive midfielder, and there's a lot of points I want to make about that. Happy to see Noel Buck get some opportunities to play. He made the most of it with his instant impact from the bench, and I don't know why was expecting him in the press conference to talk in an English accent just because he was a England youth international. He was born and raised in Massachusetts, so yeah, the math wasn't mathing in my head there. So anyway, he's a nice guy. But now we're in a situation where we're bringing in Ronaldo Vieira, who is a decent player, sure. And I would hope that he is a better defensive midfielder than certainly Nick Fernandez, who's very green to this level. Perhaps a Noel Buck, who's still coming back from an injury, maybe not 100% entirely, good enough to play. And hopefully a floor raiser for even an Ian Harkes, because Ian Harkes, he's a good MLS player, but he shouldn't be a top 5 player if you want to be aspiring for higher heights than where the San Jose Earthquakes are at now, which brings me to another point that Bruce Arena has potentially maximized the players that he has, so that's going to be a big problem if Ronaldo Vieira is the only name we can get in before the window slams shut.
A random fact: if we get obviously, we already got Riera, but we would have 3 midfielders eligible to play for England, with obviously Ronaldo Vieira, obviously Noel Buck, but also Ian Harkes was born in Derby, which when his father John Harkes played for Derby, I guess is when that happened. But obviously not pertinent to the topic. But I just thought it was a fun fact.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I forgot that about that with Harkes. It was kind of similar to how Erling Haaland could potentially have represented England too, because his father was playing in England at the time. But Ronaldo Vieira, if you want to represent a national team, get on the phone with Guinea-Bissau. I think that's probably your better route at this point. I mean, but you don't need us to tell you that. But we're happy you're here. And Bruce Arena did mention that he should be in training this week. He got his work visa. And hey, we can take help from anywhere at this point. But the only other thing that happened after that Anders Dreyer goal, well, 2 major notes that I made. So actually 2 things. Was that Zverkov drew a foul in the 89th minute. And he also drew the ire of the Quakes Ultras. Frustration was compounding with the players. And also Sonny Buddha trying to talk to the player that he was trying to talk to Zverkov, but he was getting pushed and shoved, so that was not fun. And then lastly, Jamar Ricketts came in and he had a opportunity, but he found the side netting only. And I was just thinking, the only thing that could make this day worse is if Houston Dynamo got all 3 points. And they were winning Vancouver for most of that game, but Houston Dynamo did pick up a point. So luckily for the Earthquakes, Houston Dynamo did not make up that much ground, but this is going to be a stressful ride for the rest of the way. So just from 6th place down, Portland Timbers 37 points, Colorado Rapids 36 points, Austin FC 35 points, so that's 6th through 8th. And then 9th is San Jose with 32 points on 27 games played. Real Salt Lake is 1 point behind us, but 1 game less played. Dallas is 3 points behind us, but 1 game less played. And Houston Dynamo is also 3 points behind us. So we have 3 teams breathing down our necks that can either pass us or tie with us with their game in hand. So the Houston Dynamo game is absolutely must not lose. Ideally, must win.
I mean, at this point, it's hard to pick a game and say that's not must win. I would say that like I would think that we're better than Houston Dynamo, and I think that we should be able to beat them. Because I still believe that if we're doing the things we're supposed to be doing, we can beat anybody. But I can't confidently tell you anymore that like I know that we're gonna win. You know, I don't think that this is a game where I'm coming in with any amount of confidence just because the team has found a way to let me down in so many different ways against any opponent. And it's you know, it's like 50-50 every time.
That's our most creative aspect of the Earthquakes, is finding out a new way to disappoint the fan base. Yeah, it's grim for the rest of the season. Every game is a must-win game, which I think Preston Judd has tried to make that a mentality with his grit, his kind of grit aspirations, and and new brand. That's I feel like that's part of what Preston Judd was kind of going for with that grit mentality, is to make every game a must-win game, grind it out to the very end, kind of become like that Goonies 2012 era, which he definitely portrays that in every game he plays. He will play as hard as he can till the very final whistle, which I know a lot of other players kind of do as well. Like Chicho will play till the very end. For the most part, I know some fans will give it back and forth, like he doesn't play hard enough, whatever. Espinoza, the same thing. There's a ton of players that'll give their all to the very end, and I think we just need to see a little extra extrapolated, um, concerted, unified effort from the team to make that happen. I think at one point, one of the was it the second goal for Dreyer? It kind of looked like under eight ball. It looked like under eight ball. A lot of the Earthquakes players were bundled in that little
That's
corner,
what I'm
and
saying, bro.
that's exactly how Dreyer managed to receive that ball so easily, because everyone was bundled up. Whether it be the communication issues, I don't know, but it happened, and we need to fix that. How? I don't know, but that's up to Bruce and Co to fix.
And the warning signs were there prior to that because Mark Anthony Kay got crowded out by three guys before that, and then Daniel Mooney had to barely take that ball out for a corner on the other end in a counterattack. And the reason why I emphasize Houston Dynamo specifically, and this applies to Austin too, the game after that, as more must win than the other ones, is that, okay, you drop 3 points to San Diego. At least San Diego, they're not in the playoff chase. They're fine. They're going to the playoffs. But if you lose to Houston, then that's a 6 point swing for Houston. You lose to Austin, that's a 6 point swing for Austin. Like, I don't even know if Austin's still in it, but we've lost to Austin already in the U.S. Open Cup, so you can't put anything past anybody. And my biggest concern, two biggest concerns. Once again, I have this pattern today where I think I'm going to say one thing, but then two things come up. But Houston Dynamo's goalkeeper, Jonathan Bond. We always play badly against Jonathan Bond, whether he's playing for the Galaxy or for Houston. And then also, if momentum is a thing that carries over to the next game, Houston Dynamo have good momentum from their 1-1 draw because they went to BC Place. Brooklyn Reigns got a red card, doesn't matter. They still fought hard, and Arthur scored the equalizing goal. So they're getting that positive momentum back to Houston. We have bad momentum with the way that we crashed out in this game. So Houston Dynamo, all of a sudden, they see that there's a chance, and they're going to take it. So San Jose Earthquakes have to make the adjustments, and they've got to be prepared for Houston's best shot, and we got to give it our best shot. That's all there is to it. Any other thoughts on this game past, upcoming game, before we talk about the press conference?
Can I just give a shout out to Mike Pastor out there who hit the cross? He was the first fan to hit the crossbar for the Crossbar Challenge season ticket renewal. I just wanted to give a shout out to him because it seemed like there were 4 total crossbar winners, and 2 of them came from the Tectonic Takes fan group. So 50% TT. We stay up.
We stay up. I wasn't here last episode, obviously. Did we touch on the fact that Devon scored the crossbar challenge for the second year in a row? Saving so much money on season tickets.
Dude, I've saved about $2,400 for the family.
Yeah,
it's incredible. But yeah, I did touch up on that. I also I self-titled the first ever Earthquakes fan to hit the crossbar back-to-back years.
That's amazing.
I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels right.
But when I never go to those, I just don't. But next year I'm going to get a fake beard for you, and we're gonna put you out there, and then you're gonna go for me, and then you're gonna go for yourself. That's how we're gonna play it.
I like that plan.
So, Bruce Arena, he is usually upset, even when he's not. But when he is upset, he sounds even more upset. And I am running out of ways to ask him questions that wouldn't piss him off. And Abram, you seem to have a similar problem.
And I mean, yeah, it's like I don't even know what we're supposed to do. Like,
It's like when you strip a pacifier from a baby and expect the baby to not cry.
yeah, I mean, like, I understand that if he doesn't show up to the press conference, that he's gonna get fined. I understand that he has to go to them. I know he doesn't like them. I don't like. I mean, my favorite press conferences have been Bruce Arena press conferences. Don't get me wrong, but all like my bottom five press conferences has also been Bruce Arena press conferences because he's just like so difficult to talk to, especially in games like this where I understand you're frustrated. I understand you guys just lost a lead that you didn't have to against a team that would have been really good to win against, but we also have to. We're working. We're here too. Like, it's obviously I'm not getting paid to be here, but I do have an obligation to the people listening to the show to get good answers and to ask him things and not just me, but like experienced people who are good at this. Obviously, Ivan's been doing this a lot longer than me, but Jeff Carlisle pissed him off real bad, and I'm like, okay, if Jeff Carlisle can't speak to this guy and it be like okay, it can't be an amicable discussion, then no one can. And it's like, man, we do have to keep doing this for the rest of the season, and there's no reason for you to make it difficult.
I will say this. I do appreciate that Bruce Arena makes it a point to not give the cookie cutter press conference routine. Because if you watched any one sport for enough time, you can probably predict what certain managers and players will say as soon as a question is asked. But at least with Bruce Arena, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So you can't be like, oh, cookie cutter responses on one end, and then it's like, okay, but you gotta give us something to work with on the other end. Usually, Bruce Arena is somewhere in the middle, but I think back to a press conference. It was after the 7-0 loss to Seattle Sounders. Matias Almeida was just fed up. I don't think Bruce Arena's quite gotten to that point yet, but come a few more games and the results don't turn, we might get there soon.
I also want to say something about press conferences in general. What I've learned over my last 2 years almost of doing this, it's a funny quip that I hear from Sports Interactive, the development team that makes Football Manager. For those who don't know, a manager of simulation game. They got a lot of criticism for their press conferences where they ask the same questions. Like after every game, they'd ask us very similar questions, and they fired back with like, no, that's what press conferences are like. Like you go in and you get the same questions, and that is extremely true. But we have to do that because that's our one. It's our job. Two, if we ask you a difficult question, like a truly difficult question, it looks bad on us. We get in trouble for it. We get told like we don't want to ruffle any feathers, and we are the ones that are vulnerable to losing our credentials in that situation. Bruce isn't getting fired because of he's not getting fired for being rude in the press conferences, right? And not that's what I'll say on that. But it is a asymmetric dynamic, and I don't think that anyone wants to acknowledge the side of the press. That we're just there to do what we're there for the benefit of the people, but it doesn't seem like it's treated that way. We seem like we're treated kind of like leeches almost at some point.
And I'll conclude this section with turning over to Devon. What you make of in Bruce's first statement that at the very end he tagged, maybe we weren't as well coached as we could have been. So how do you feel like he's taking responsibility, and do you think that we're going to see any substantial changes barring a transfer going forward?
I find his statements somewhat ironic, given the fact that he says things like that, but then he also follows up and just says like the team isn't smart enough to play well, or whatever it was that he said. I think Abram mentioned that in our Discord server. Link in the description, by the way. He goes back and forth on saying all these things, and it just never gets a clear answer. It's nothing clear cut. You ask him, for example, like, what are your thoughts on the team? the team's performance of the night, and he's like, "Well, this team stinks." And then all of a sudden, the next question, he's like, "Well, I could have done better as a coach, but how?" You know, there's always that why factor, the how factor, who, what, where, when, why, how. Those questions are not answered. He just answers it in a very generalistic fashion, which is, I think, what is very head scratching for a lot of media members. Is kind of like what you touched on, Ivan, is that there's no cookie cutter response. The cookie cutters are answering the who, what, where, when, why, how, and Bruce does not answer that.
Right. Speaking of run-ins with media members, one of my favorite parts of the day was meeting Taylor Twellman. So you love him, you hate him, you at least know who Taylor Twellman is if you've watched soccer in this country. So it was great to talk to him briefly, and he was a fun guy. He's much more chill than you might think, and I guess that makes sense because no one can be as amped up as Taylor Twellman can be at times in his most viral moments 24/7. But yeah, it's just cool to remember that, hey, occasionally we do get the A commentary team, and Taylor Twellman does descend from the wherever he calls home base, whether it's LA or New York or something. But
And I do want to say that he is just as handsome in real life as he is on camera. He's a very handsome guy. His hair does not move. Great.
yeah, he might get the same haircut in Europe whenever he's there from Antoine Griezmann. I do want to give a little bit of tectonic takes trivia. So there's been a few moves made, of course, not by San Jose Earthquakes, but from other Major League Soccer teams. And I'm going to preface this with a trivia question, multiple choice trivia. Which team was the first one to score against France in the 2022 World Cup? I'll give it to Abram first. So it's either A, Tunisia, B, Australia, or C, Denmark.
I feel
What was the
like
first answer? What was the first one?
Tunisia.
Tunisia?
Oh, Tunisia.
I think that it was Denmark because that's the best of the teams you mentioned, and I feel like I remember them having a decent run in that Euros.
Denmark is not the answer. So, Devon, you get a 50-50 shot. Tunisia or Australia?
Heck yeah, I get one less answer. I think it's Tunisia. I feel like the team that scored against France was the unexpected team.
Well, the first team to score against France in that group stage was Australia. The goal scorer was Archie Goodwin, which was the transfer that caught my eye the most that happened since our last recording. From Adelaide United, Charlotte FC bring in Archie Goodwin, another player to supplement Wilfred Zaha there. So more and more familiar faces coming to Major League Soccer. While other clubs such as Toronto, they offload the likes of Bernadeschi and Matty Longstaff the other direction. But hopefully, before the transfer window slam shut, we'll get to mention one more new name at least for San Jose Earthquakes. But this is getting to the end of our episode for today. Abram, Devon, do you want to plug anything or?
No, make sure that you guys are subscribing. We are getting very close to 500 subscribers on the channel. We are posting press conferences after most press conferences if we're able to. It's difficult when we're away for obvious reasons. But yeah, I'm going to plug Tectonic Takes, believe it or not, and then also myself on Twitter at Bambastic or at L Bambastic. So at EL_BAMBASTIC. I haven't been up on updating people off of like the Towns games and stuff like that, but I am watching those games and I will occasionally give my thoughts when I see fit. So definitely check that out.
All right, Devon.
Only thing I want to plug is the gaps between our back line. And right back to you, Ivan.
All right, so I recently posted an article on my blog and I shared it on my social media, but in case you haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, I took the World Cup qualification standings and using the remaining fixtures, I calculated slash guesstimated what the field of 48 teams could look like next summer. Then I conducted a group stage draw and I predicted the group stage all the way to the World Cup final. So if you're interested in World Cup content, I'll provide a link in the description below for that article. But most importantly, the last thing I want to plug, we want to thank Martin Slingstad for putting together the event in conjunction with the Sounds Earthquakes for Autism Awareness Night. It's a very important thing that society needs to do to be more educated on all sorts of, whether it's autism, whether it's other things that people live with, or that's part of their identity, that we want to be as accepting to them and love them and make them as part of our community 100%. And Martin has done tireless work with many other content creators, traveling across the country, occasionally across the world. And if you want to further support his cause, follow him on Instagram, Martin's Autism Life, because it's important when we have a night, a celebration like that for a soccer game, that we don't just forget about it the day after, that we look for ways that we can support advocates like Martin any way we can. So
I also think it's definitely important to understand, like, what autism is about too, because there's a lot of confused individuals out there who struggle at life and don't realize that they may or may not have autism. And this awareness that Martin's bringing forward to the world is kind of displaying, like, if you have, if you see this within yourself, maybe, maybe you should go see someone and see if that, applies to you. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I don't want to take that words out of context, but, spreading awareness. And Martin does an incredible job at that.
yeah. So I think that was the appropriate way to end off this podcast, given what was centered around this past game. And we are thankful for all of the members of our community who supports us, who supports the Sounds Earthquakes, and we look forward to talking to you guys again soon and for sharing that with you all soon. Take care. Go Quakes.
Go quick.
Go Quakes.